Good morning, it's Steven Zelnard here with Remax West Zelnard Associates, and another great week in real estate. And it's amazing because we picked up another listing last week, going to go live this week. And one of our deals that we sold conditional last week, we got one condition waived. We got a few more to go, but we're right on track. And if you've been following me with Mondays with Steve, just regarding the inventory, I've been talking about the last couple of weeks because it's going to be critical going into the winter months of selling real estate properties. And so let's say 2 weeks ago we started at 18,000 units. Now we're down to 17. Last week we were 17,000 units, and as of this morning, down to 16,000 units. So historically, naturally, we're going to go down to less inventory. And I always mention it, economics 101. When there's no supply, there's going to be that demand that's going to pick it up and get property sold. And because we monitor everything so very tightly, especially myself, and very numbers, very statistics based person. I'm just watching now suspension, termination, and expires, how many are coming up per day, and it's not necessarily that all these properties, as the inventory is going down, are selling. They're actually just coming off the market. And what I'm finding is that what's left on the market is not really the best product. A lot of it's overpriced, or just, yeah, it's basically overpriced, and they're not giving you enough value for what you're paying for the property. So for myself personally, I got 3 amazing AAA buyers that we can't find properties for them. And if this was like a month and a half ago, we would have closed these simultaneously in a couple days. And now we're, it's my luck that they all, sprung up at the wrong time. But ultimately, now we got to go use other methods to find sellers. So ultimately, going back into our database, and I'll send letters and we'll cold call and door knock specific neighborhoods to find these to kind of spring up a few listings for our clients. And that's pretty much it regarding real estate. And so I was mentioning before, I got an opportunity to sit on a video conference between the paralegals of Ontario. It was one of their mandatory courses that they needed to do just to kind of bring them up to date regarding this cannabis, basically cannabis, and how it's going to affect the landlords, their clients, and how do we protect us, basically. So amazing. I'm a real estate agent. I don't know if they knew I was on, but I sat on for 2.5 hours, watched these guys talk about and learned a lot about basically the whole rules and how they're going to approach us. And look at this lease agreement I picked up, which was pretty cool. It's going to be like 30 odd pages. I mean, if your tenant signs this, he's a AAA tenant, because there's a lot of stuff in here that definitely helps us landlords out. Usually, any lease agreements usually biased towards the buyer or the tenant, but ultimately this one here is very, very geared towards landlord safety in the renting or rentals. And again, so if you get your tenant to sign this lease, you're going to have a good. If anything were to come down the pipe and you had to get into court, you're going to have a lot of power, basically, based on all these clauses are written. I'm just going to read the cannabis law, or the clause that they wrote in here. Very basic, but just amazing. Just makes sense. And there's no lease agreements out there that has this. It's incredible. I've talked to many lawyers that no one has anything yet on cannabis, so it's so quite fresh. But ultimately, we want to be ahead of the curve here. So the clause reads: the tenants or occupants of the rented premises shall not engage in the cultivation or growing of cannabis in the rented premises. A breach of this rule shall be sufficient basis for the landlord to seek termination of the tenancy based on the tenant's substantial interference with the legal interests of the landlord and other tenants at the residential complex. And then that's the first part. Now the second part could talk more about medicinal. Naturally, if someone needs it for medicinal use, it's a different story. So the second part of this clause reads: if there are medical conditions where the cultivation and growing of cannabis is deemed necessary to accommodate the needs of a tenant or occupant of rented premises, and the tenant provides proof of the same, such activity shall not be conducted at the rented premises or the residential complex, but shall be conducted off-site. So still, ultimately, if it's medicinal purpose, we just still don't want the growing to be done on-site. Like I said, and another clause that I wrote is, like, if you want to steep it in a tea, or there's edibles, naturally that's fine. But smoking and growing it on the premises is a no-no, just based on the stigmatization of the property later. And again, nothing wrong with smoking's your thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just ultimately not on the property or growing inside of it. Outside, doesn't matter. Who cares? And again, that's it. Have an awesome week, guys. We'll talk soon. Bye bye.